What if the biggest threat to your financial future wasn't the economy? What if actually it was you? That's the wild shift in perspective I got after reading The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. I realized that my instincts, my emotions, and even my childhood upbringing were determining the choices I was making around money, and oftentimes for the worse. Today, I'm sharing 18 game-changing principles that have completely redefined how I approach my money and might just do the same for you too. So if you're ready to discover what is driving your financial decisions, then stick around. This may be the most important video that you watch all year. Have you ever looked at someone's financial decisions and thought,
what the fuck were you thinking?
Well, here's the thing. Everyone's financial decisions make sense once you know their story. In this first chapter, Housel reminds us that people's financial decisions and behaviors are often rooted in their own life experiences. He writes, your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.000000001% of what's happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. So for example, think about someone who grew up during the Great Depression. They may view financial security as being linked to being very cautious and avoiding risk at all costs, saving every penny and minimizing debt. However, if you contrast that to someone who grew up during the 2000 tech boom, they may view risk as a necessity, as a necessary part of achieving higher financial returns. Now, actually, both individuals are right based on their individual stories. In the film The Big Short, we saw how different characters responded very differently to the 2008 financial crisis. Some people saw it as an amazing opportunity to make a ton of money, while others saw it the end of all the financial markets and a time where they were going to lose a lot of money. Again, the same event, the same environment, but two very different perspectives based on their unique circumstances and their individual stories. So if we bring this back to you right now, what are some of the earliest stories that you heard about money when you were growing up? And take a moment to think how they may have shaped how you interact with money today and how that's impacted your relationship with your finances. By understanding that every single person has a different money story, we can actually approach financial advice and decision-making with a much greater self-awareness and a sense of empathy, knowing that what is right for one person does not make it right for another person, and each of us has a different story running. Do you believe in luck and risk? Well, what if I told you that they both had actually a very big part to play in financial success? In this chapter, Housel explores the unseen forces of luck and risk, and how, in his own words, nothing is as good or bad as it seems. He emphasizes that success is not just about talent, it's often about timing and opportunity, and yes, even just pure luck. So let's consider Bill Gates. Yes, an individual who is incredibly talented, but also incredibly lucky. Gates' high school was one of the few in the entire country that had access to a computer, a privilege and a form of luck that was not available to the majority of students across the country. And so oftentimes what Housel argues is that we look at individuals like Gates and we see their incredible talent, but we often overlook the incredibly important part that luck had to play in their success as well. In the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, he also points to luck and timing as playing a really big role in people's successes, including the likes of Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. Making the point that if these individuals weren't born at that exact time during the computer revolution, they would never have gone on the path which they did, which ultimately led them to have this incredible success. So again, not ever undermining the importance that luck has to play in individuals' journeys too. Think about moments in your own life that luck had a role to play. When I do this, it definitely brings in a sense of humility and gratitude, knowing that I could be on a very different path right now, and that luck really did have a big part to play in that too. So the takeaway from this chapter is that yes, while hard work and talent are crucial for success, we can't ever overlook the unseen force that is luck and the role it has to play in everyone's success. So let me ask you this. What would it take for you to be truly financially satisfied? Now, for most people, that goalpost is forever moving. So even when they reach it, they're always in pursuit of just a little bit more. This chapter tackles the dangerous pursuit of more without ever defining enough. Housel writes, "The hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving." Without clarity over when enough is enough, people have a tendency to take really risky decisions in pursuit of just a little bit more. And he shares a fantastic example of this. Take Bernie Madoff, the infamous Ponzi schemer, who by all accounts was incredibly successful and incredibly wealthy, yet risked it all and engaged in illegal activities just to get that little bit more. And it was the ruin of him both personally and financially. Housel really makes the argument that knowing when to stop, knowing when enough is as important as knowing how to build wealth, which is such an important lesson, especially for this channel, as we are so focused on financial freedom and building wealth for you. The film Wall Street also illustrates this idea, with the character Gordon Gekko having the motto that
greed, for lack of a better word, is good,
which ultimately leads to his own demise. When it comes to money, sometimes more is less. Think about in your own life, what is your financial freedom figure? What is your goalpost to know that when you achieve, you're good and you're not gonna keep trying to seek out that extra 1% or that little bit more, which may lead you to take some more risky decisions. If there is one secret to building wealth, it is the power of compounding, something that so few people actually know about, but it's a topic that I love to talk about because it is so transformational. Compounding is one of the most powerful forces in wealth building, and Housel even writes himself, compounding is the single most powerful tool we have in growing wealth. This simple principle is why small, regular investments can grow so ferociously over time and produce you incredible wealth in the long term. Warren Buffett's own wealth is due to the power of compounding. He started investing around the age of 10. And while he's achieved great results, it's by far nowhere near the best results that Wall Street investors are able to achieve. His secret to his success is that he started so young. So he's had over 50 plus years to allow his money be working for him, growing for him, and compounding for him. This is such a key principle to success, to financial success and building your wealth. So dear friend, if you are not investing yet, what is holding you back? Please heed this warning of the power of compounding and ask yourself, what are the blocks in your way? Come check out what we do here, obviously to support people like yourself to go on that investing journey. But no matter how small you start with, be sure to get started, get in the game, and that is how you can really benefit from what Albert Einstein calls himself the eighth wonder of the world. Getting rich is one thing, but keeping it, that is a whole different game. So this chapter really focuses on the difference between getting wealthy and then staying wealthy. Housel himself writes, good investing is not necessarily about making good decisions. It's about consistently not screwing up. He emphasizes that getting wealth often requires risk, but keeping wealth often actually requires being cautious and having a great deal of humility. Take Mark Zuckerberg, for example, an individual who took massive levels of risk in order to achieve the financial security he has today. But now that he has it, he's a lot more cautious in protecting it and has a much more diversified investment strategy. So Housel's whole point is that yes, taking risk may be important in order to achieve financial security, but once you have it, your mindset really needs to shift towards preservation of that wealth. In the book, The Millionaire Next Door, the authors also talk about this topic, sharing that most millionaires preserve their wealth by being really frugal and being very cautious with their financial decisions versus making really flashy investment choices. So the key takeaway from Housel in this chapter is that preservation of your money and protecting it is as important as building it in the first place. So check in with where you are in your journey and know that once you reach a certain level of financial security, it will be really wise to start shifting to a more preservation mindset. In the world of investing, a few big wins can make up for countless small losses. So when it comes to financial success, it actually hinges on just a few key moments. Housel writes that you can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune. This chapter really highlights that sometimes a few outstanding successes can really offset multiple failures that you may have experienced. Take a look at venture capitalists, for example. They may invest in a bunch of companies, many of whom may never make a return and even fail. However, they will hold out for the big wins like Facebook or investing in Apple, and those returns will outweigh any of the losses they've experienced. So Housel's point here in this chapter is really to emphasize that you don't need to win all the time, you just need to win enough to outweigh the losses. And so what I want to invite you to do is look at your own life, because sometimes we can be really hung up on the losses that we're making or the times that we're failing, but to realize that you don't have to get it right every single time. Take a step back, look at the bigger picture of your life, and pinpoint where you have been winning and where your successes lie too. So I loved this chapter and how Housel explains that the real wealth in life isn't in living in luxury, it's about living life based on your terms and how you define success. Housel redefines wealth as freedom, saying that the highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. This chapter is really about building the financial freedom to gain complete control over your time and over your day. Many financially successful people don't just focus on material wealth alone, they also focus on time freedom. Take Tim Ferriss, for example, with his book, The 4-Hour Workweek. He wrote a book which really focuses on designing a life of complete time freedom, a true mark of wealth and financial freedom for him. So I'd love to hear from you. Like, what would you do with your time if you didn't have to work for money? Here at the Witch of Wall Street, we obviously focus big on financial freedom, financial independence, but it's never about just having more numbers in a bank account or an investment account. It's always about what that gives you and the freedom it gives you to ultimately create the life that you desire. We often think that wealth is what will make others admire us, but as cheesy as it sounds, happiness truly is an inside job. And so in this chapter, Housel really looks at seeking admiration from others through wealth as this very dangerous trap. He writes that people tend to want wealth in order to signal to others that they should be liked and admired. Housel argues that true happiness, true fulfillment, comes from pursuing things that light you up, that are aligned with your values, and definitely not from trying to seek out the approval of others by presenting or expressing your wealth materially. He makes the point that most people buy these fancy, luxurious looking cars in order to impress other people, but the reality is that no one really is taking notice because everyone is so hyper fixated on their own lives. And so the great point that's made in this chapter is that when it comes to spend your money, spend it in a way that is aligned with your values and what matters to you most, and not in a way that's going to seek out external validation. So think about this in your own life. How much of your spending is driven by the perceptions of others and maybe keeping up with the Joneses? And how much of it is you truly connected with your true values and what makes you happy? The premise of this chapter is real wealth lies in the invisible, in the money that you don't spend. So Housel argues a completely different argument here, in that real wealth actually lies in the money that you hold on to, that you save, that you invest, versus the money that you spend in order to appear rich or to look wealthy externally. He says spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. Warren Buffett is a great example of this. He is one of the richest men in the world, yet he lives a really modest lifestyle. He lives in the same house he bought decades ago and does not invest in unnecessary luxury. Most of his wealth is tied up in assets and definitely not flashy expenses. So take a moment to think yourself, like, what are your financial priorities? Are they linked up or tied up to others' expectations or trying to present a certain image to others? Or are they very clearly aligned with your long-term goals that are linked to your values and what truly brings you happiness and fulfillment in life? You know, true wealth is not about appearances. It's about the freedom, the time, and the peace of mind that money brings you. And I am definitely here for this redefining of what wealth and what a rich life looks like. This chapter emphasizes that it's not about what you earn, it's what you keep that really is the most important factor. And I totally agree. When it comes to building financial freedom, it's not about how high your income is, it's about how consistently you're saving and investing your money so it goes to work for you. So Housel says that building wealth has little to do with your income or investment returns and lots to do with your savings rate, meaning how much you're saving, because saving provides flexibility and opportunities and the power to make decisions. So really, when we look at building wealth, it's such an important key step to consider too. Consider this example, which I absolutely love, of Ronald Reed, a gas station attendant and a janitor. So a man who didn't have a high income, but had a high savings rate and was consistently saving and investing over the course of his lifetime. When he passed away, it was revealed that he had amassed over $8 million. Again, not because of a high income, but because of a high savings rate, really emphasizing the point here that Housel's making. So look at your own finances. Are you saving regularly? Are you setting aside a specific proportion every single month to invest in yourself and your future? And if not, now may be the perfect time to do so. The premise of this chapter is that sometimes it's better to make reasonable decisions when it comes to our finances than purely rational, because reasonable decisions tend to err more on the side of our emotions and our human behavior. So Housel writes that do not aim to be coldly rational when making financial decisions. Aim to be pretty reasonable. Take investing in real estate, for example. A lot of people find it a lot safer than investing in the stock market, although the stock market has historically yielded much higher returns. However, if someone has a more emotional, safer comfort level of investing in real estate, then that's likely going to be the better investment decision for them. And Housel makes the argument that you're better off sticking with a reasonable plan than completely abandoning a purely rational one. This idea is also emphasized in the book Thinking Fast and Slow, where the author emphasizes that cognitive biases often shape our decisions. So as humans, we may be more likely to make the decision that feels right, even if it's not actually the rational one. And in the long term, that's actually okay if it means that we stay consistent with the decision that we've made. So when it comes to putting together your unique financial plan, think about what makes you feel best, because actually that plan may work a lot better for you than the one that is purely logical or rational, but may make you feel uncomfortable and so perhaps not stick with it. Life is full of surprises and money is no different. So how do you plan for things that you can't predict? Well, that's really what the author focuses on in this chapter. And he really emphasizes the importance of preparing for the unknowns. He writes that the correct lesson to learn from surprises is that the world is surprising. What a powerful lesson. But it's so important when you're creating your financial plan that you also give leeway for the unexpected things that might happen, including recessions or pandemics or just personal emergencies. The COVID-19 pandemic was an example of a major financial surprise to millions of people around the world, leading to job losses, economic downturns, and stock market crashes. So for those who had built in an emergency fund into their financial planning, it was really, really difficult, but it was manageable. So Housel really makes the point of having what he calls these financial shock absorbers in place in the form of having additional cash cushions and savings set aside so that even when you're faced with the most insane, unexpected events, that you're still able to manage and take care of yourself. Think about your own finances, for example. Do you have a buffer in place for these life surprises? And think about it as an insurance policy for your peace of mind. Housel writes that the most important part of every plan is planning on your plan, not going according to plan. So this chapter really highlights the importance of having a backup plan for all the unexpected occurrences that can happen in life and to your finances. Take Ray Dalio, for example. He is the founder of Bridgewater Associates, one of the biggest financial hedge funds in the world, and he really credits his success to anticipating and planning for errors. So his whole investment strategy is based on diversification and always building in enough of a buffer to enable him to weather the many economic downturns that him and his firm have been through and still come out incredibly financially successful. Again, coming back to your own finances, are you prepared for life's surprises? Are you leaving enough room for error, or are you expecting everything to go perfectly according to plan? I hope it does, but it always is great just to have that buffer there so you're always taken care of. In this chapter, Housel asks, what if your financial goals that you set today aren't the ones you want in the future? And the premise of this chapter really is to embrace that uncertainty and be flexible with it, especially when it comes to long-term planning, which he writes is harder than it seems because people's goals and desires change over time. A great example of this is the FIRE movement, the Financial Independence Retire Early movement. A lot of people who plan to retire early later on discover new interests and passions that they want to go and pursue. And so really the whole premise of this chapter is encouraging readers to maintain flexibility and an open mind when it comes to planning your finances today and into the future. So my question to you is, what are your financial goals today and how might they change in the long term? Really here, flexibility is key. Every financial choice has a trade-off. Even free money isn't free. And so in this chapter, Housel really explores the hidden costs of success. Housel writes, the price of investing success is uncertainty, doubt, and regret. In this chapter, he explores that every financial gain has an invisible cost, whether that is risk, time, or the emotional energy. Cryptocurrencies, for example, are often seen as this free opportunity at making a lot of money because they do come with a lot of higher returns. However, there is an invisible cost too, which is massive volatility, a big risk, and the emotional volatility of having to go through those very big highs and those very big lows as well. So the famous saying, there's no such thing as a free lunch, perfectly summarizes this chapter. And so when you look at your own finances, having that awareness that there's always a cost to every decision, an opportunity cost of how we could have used our time differently or used our money differently. And having that awareness will really support you in making more conscious money decisions, being aware of what you're also saying no to. As a financial educator, I know this to be true. There is no one-size-fits-all financial plan or piece of financial advice because everyone is different. Everyone's goals and values and life is different, right? Personal finances is personal for a reason. In this chapter, Housel really emphasizes this point, and he states that there's no correct way to manage money, only what works for you. Again, the FIRE movement, the Financial Independence Retire Early movement, is a great example of this. While some people love to save aggressively and retire early, other people much prefer to work a bit later in life but enjoy more luxury along the way. Now, neither is right or wrong. What it comes down to is what is right for you based on what is best in alignment with your values, your goals, and what your vision for your life looks like. Pessimism might sound smart, but it can actually lead to a lot of missed opportunities. And in this chapter, Housel really makes the point of balancing caution with balanced optimism as well, which can ultimately lead to greater growth. Housel points out that pessimism is often seen to be more realistic than optimism. However, balanced optimism is what is required and needed to actually ensure long-term growth. He says that pessimism isn't just more common than optimism, it also sounds smarter. And take the 2008 financial crisis, for example. So many investors were overly pessimistic, which kept them from getting back into the stock market and investing. Meanwhile, those investors who were cautiously optimistic and got back into the stock market or stayed in the stock market benefited from the massive returns in their portfolio growth as a result. So ask yourself, are you someone who is overly pessimistic, or are you overly optimistic, or are you somewhere in between? And how has that worked out for you so far? Our emotions can often shape our beliefs around money, which can lead to really irrational decision making. So in this final chapter, Housel shares that everyone has an incomplete view of the world, but we form a narrative to fill in the gaps. Emotions then fill those gaps, which can lead to very irrational decision making. Take the 2008 housing crisis, for example. This was largely fueled by the irrational belief that housing prices would continue to rise indefinitely. It led to very risky decision-making and very risky lending, which ultimately led to the financial collapse. So coming back to where we began this journey, checking in with yourself. What are your beliefs and what are your emotions around money, and how are they fueling and driving your decision making with money right now? Overall, my biggest takeaway from the psychology of money is that wealth is about so much more than just numbers. It comes back to our stories, our beliefs, our values, and really knowing when enough is enough. Each one of these principles that Housel takes us through has so much value, and there's so much there for us to learn. Thank you so much for joining me. If you found you got some new insights from this video, be sure to share your reflections down below and check out my next video here.